Hello and welcome to the next episode of DDR, the podcast all about your favorite Drow, Drizzt Do'Urden. My name is Justin, and in this episode we'll be diving deep into part 4 of Exile, titled Helpless, discussing all of our favorite plot points, characters, and more.
And my name is Jeffrey. One of the things that we like to do each week is take a look at the couple of aspects of the book and how they'd relate to our favorite tabletop role-playing game, Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition.
Following along with the show is easy. Just grab a copy of the book, read the next part of the book, and tune in every week. But remember, we want to hear your thoughts too. You can share your dim lights with us at drizztdoneright@gmail.com.
Or, better yet, be part of the ongoing discussion on our very own Drizzt Done Right Discord. The Discord invitation is linked in the podcast description. It's a place where we like to go beyond the page and dive even a little deeper into the lore that draws us all here today. If you raise an interesting point, we might just bring you up on the show.
Absolutely. Totally. Awesome. Well, here we are, part 4 out of 5. We're getting so close to finishing up book 2 here already. This is going so much quicker, Jeffrey.
Yeah, absolutely.
So how are you doing? I haven't seen you in a while.
I've been good, man. You know, just getting used to the early morning shifts and going through it. Just had a little bit of a stomach bug on the last couple of days. Yeah, that was horrendous.
No
I mean, I'm happy it wasn't the Rona part 2.
Right.
You know, I'm happy that I didn't have any major illness or anything like it. But yeah, it shut me down for a couple of days. Couldn't really,
totally.
you know, keep food down. And you know me. I like food. I like to eat. And so not having the ability to do so is sometimes just really, really saddening.
That's discouraging. Yeah. No, that
But,
sucks.
you know, luckily I got caught up on a whole lot of TV watching and sleeping at the same time. So, you know, it was good.
That's nice. That part of it is nice. That's true.
Got to make the most of it. You know, my wife, Elizabeth, she listens to these. We had to take our cat to the vet. Tahani had a little ear scratch in her ear. So she had an infection and or irritation, whatever you want to call it. So they gave us ear drops and
That's gotta be easy.
like
antibiotics?
Yeah, but you got to give it a little syringe. And
Yeah. Well, I have a scar on my hand from when I had to do that. I had to give antibiotics to our cat Momo, and that was the last time I gave antibiotics. I was just like, you know what? I'm done. That was after like at least a week of giving antibiotics, and I was just like, if that's what you're gonna do, then we're done.
Well, then you will have faith healing from here on out. There shall be no antibiotics.
I still have a scar.
For those on YouTube, let me see if I can get a little light on it. There, just a little red. She got me
right there. Yep, I see it.
Yep. Well, and she didn't really get me. You know, thankfully, my cats and behind the scenes, real quick for people, my headphones sometimes will turn off. So I'm going to wave at Justin if they happen.
Oh no!
I'll be taking a second to reconnect. No big deal. We'll be able to work through it. But so she's really nice. She doesn't really scratch me up much. So like she's not a swiper. But when she got me, it was because she was trying to springboard off, and I'm trying to keep her from pushing. And it's like,
right.
But luckily Elizabeth's been able to help me. And a 2-person deal with the cat is way easier than trying to pin her down and get it.
Yeah, totally.
But what have you been up to, bud?
Well, I've been enjoying my 7 days off in a row here. This whole shift schedule thing is really nice. I mean, I work for 4 weeks and then I have a week off, and it's awesome, but at the same time, I'm like itching to get back because I'm just like, okay, this is too much time in the house. You know,
that's good because you get like a mini vacation. But I mean, you're really crushing the hours for those 4 weeks when you're there. It's not like you're doing a part-time 6-hour-a-day type job.
Right. Yeah, it's 12-hour shifts. It's not every day or anything like that, but it's like 4 days in a row of 12-hour shifts can really wear on you.
Plus commute, plus everything. I mean,
Yep.
That's a lot.
So, but I'm also just like so excited right now because I was messaging you earlier when you were getting everything booted up that I was listening to the Zuckerberg give his Meta Connect speeches, and they announced, Jeffrey, they just announced 2 hours ago the Meta Quest 3 VR system. I don't even know if I can call it VR anymore. It's like also augmented reality. And I went right on and I ordered it. Like I pre-ordered it. It's coming out in like less than a month. It's coming out October 10th.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, I'm looking at it. I'm like, oh no, October 10th is my first day of 4 night shifts, and I'm just like, shoot. I'm going to get it, and it's going to sit there, and I'm not going to be able to play it.
Now, is it just for gaming? Obviously, you could probably use it for like conferences and like like movies or like entertainment.
Right.
As well, right?
Well, and that's what I'm really excited for, because apparently you can just like, if you have an empty wall behind you, you can just like put a TV up there while wearing the headset, because you like see your living room as it is, because it has little cameras on it on the front, like seeing what you see, right?
That's cool. Yeah.
And so you see your whole living room, and you're just like, I want a TV right there, and you just like place it there, and you can make it as big as you want.
Minority Report, whatever you want.
Right, exactly. Yeah, totally. Yeah. And I mean,
Nice.
At least that's what they make it look like. We'll see. We'll see what it actually looks like.
Functionality of it.
Yeah, exactly. But man, I'm stoked. I'm so excited.
I always kind of want that stuff, but like for me then too, I have the glasses and I always worry. I mean, before I had the problem with my eyes, now I have the prisms in my lenses. Like I always wonder, like I used to just take it off because I'm nearsighted and I'm good. Right. But like, how's that going to work for people who can't, you know?
I mean, I know that in previous systems, they've had like, you can special order your prescription lenses to insert into the system. Yeah.
That's crazy.
And so you don't even need to wear glasses when you wear the system. Now, I don't understand why a system wouldn't be able to, like, you just like punch in your prescription, right? And then it adjusts to it.
Well, I mean, you can do it automatically, because a lot of times when you would go to the eye doctors, they use it sights in on your pupil.
Oh yeah, totally. Right.
So you'll look at a picture and it'll be like, zoom,
yep.
And it'll automatically, like, well, not automatically give you your prescription, but close.
Yeah, exactly. It gets in the ballpark. So I don't know. We'll see. I don't know what capability this system has, but I'm excited to check it out. So this is my first VR system. I've never had one before, but yeah, after getting this job, I was just like, I want to treat myself to something. This came along, and I was just like, oh, that's kind of expensive. But I messaged Sarah, messaged my wife, Sarah, and just to show you how awesome she is, she's just like, well, I know you've really wanted this for a while, so why don't you go ahead and get it? I'm like, I love you, I love you, I love you.
Nice. Like, well, you'll have to like let everybody know your official opinion when you are able to kick that off.
Totally, yeah. Oh, I totally will. Awesome.
Well, are you ready to put on your adventuring pack, bud?
Let me put on my new VR system. We can jump
slide it
right
over.
In here.
Engage that infravision, bud. And now we bring the insight check. That little piece that we give you right before the start of the chapters. You know, what you get before the Drizzt.
Totally.
So we start this insight check, and the theme is helpless. Like Justin mentioned earlier, the name of the title, right?
Yeah, I've been calling the parts after the title of the insight check. I don't know if that's what he meant to do or not, but that's what.
Well, no, and some of them does for the first chapter. A lot of it leads in like that, or at least that's the theme of.
Yeah,
where
it's
he's
like
going.
it's definitely the theme of the entire part. That's for sure.
So the physical pains of a warrior in combat cannot compare to the conditioned flinch that a prisoner feels at the sound of the whip, which cuts deeply into their soul. We're all prisoners at one time or another, even if only to ourselves. Drizzt's youth in Menzoberranzan was such that he felt it could only improve. At first, he thought through sheer will of determination that he could stand alone with sword and principle and defeat that helplessness. However, looking back, he rarely stood alone. Zaknafane, Belwar, Clacker, warning, some of these we haven't got to yet.
Yeah, what's up with that?
Brunner, Regis, Catti-brie, Wulfgar, and of course, Guinevere. Not only did they help fight the helplessness, rage, and frustration, they gave him life. So you were wondering, go ahead.
Yeah, so I've read at least the first book of the Icewind Dale trilogy. I know I started the second one. I don't know if I ever finished it, and I know I never read the third one. So I know Brenner, Regis, Brunner.
I might be saying it right. I've always called him Brunner.
Brunner, Regis, Catti-brie, Wulfgar. I know them. Mushi, I don't remember. But it's like, okay, Jeffrey, did we do this in the right order?
Yes. Because what we're doing is going chronologically. So if
Right.
we'd have read Icewind Dale trilogy, we would have met Drizzt in mid-adventurer, path.
Right.
But now we get Drizzt as he starts, so that when we
Right.
do hit Icewind Dale, it'll just be part of his adventure, the next leg of that journey, instead of
Right.
jumping back and forth.
Yeah.
So we're gonna attempt to follow these as we go. I guess chronologically is going to be the proper way to say it, but in the way it should be. Like, you don't watch Star Wars 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You can,
That's
right? It's going to
true.
be a little different, but you can watch it out of order to get the best viewing experience.
Right. Well, then,
So,
with that thought, should we not have started with the Icewind Dale trilogy?
well, no, because like I said,
Started with the
when
original,
we
and then
do
because
get to Icewind Dale, we'll know like that's year 110 for Drizzt instead of meeting Drizzt at 110 years old and then going back to see him born.
yeah, no, I just mean like Icewind Dale was written first.
Right, technically. Not
Yeah.
technically. But yeah, it was written first.
Yeah, so then I was just thinking like, well, if you're bringing Star Wars into it, I mean, like the original was Star Wars was episode 4 and so on. But yeah,
Right,
anyway.
that's what I mean though. But if you watch them by year, you'd be watching 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, and then 7, 8, 9. So everything would be out of order. What we're doing is taking them in order of the days.
I got you. We're saying the same thing, but your Star Wars episode 1 is different from my Star Wars episode 1.
Right. No. I'm saying.
But-
I think we're saying we're good.
We're confusing ourselves. This is not a Star Wars podcast. This is a Drizzt Do'Urden podcast.
But that is the insight check.
Awesome.
So then, after the insight check, having given them that tender morsel wrapped in a Star Wars analogies, let's get down to the Drizzt. The Drizzt is the part of the show where we take a look at the next part of the book and give you the Drizzt of it. So we start with chapter 16, Insidious Chains, and this begins with Clacker coming to consciousness inside of a castle in the Illithid community. And so he can't really see too well. He's kind of coming out of it dazed, but he sees Duergar, goblins, deep gnomes, and several other races. He's still kind of foggy from the psychic blasts. He knew that the mind flayers knew, though, that there was more than meets the eye to the hook horror. Their attacks had weakened Clacker's resistance against the polymorph spell from the wizard, and he kind of struggled to keep control.
That's right.
The Illithid, though they weren't fools, they wouldn't keep something that large inside of tight quarters. They kept him. The slave society, although that they had, always has a place for everyone. So they put him on this giant stone island that's about 50 yards around, and it's surrounded by a large chasm. He's surrounded by several gray dwarves whose mind had suffered too much damage from the Illithids, and they sat staring off, blank-faced, at nothing, waiting their turn for the supper table of their cruel masters.
Oh.
Yeah, when they said that, I was like, that's rough, because I was thinking cannibalism first off, but we will get to how that goes. So Clacker's pacing this island looking for a way to escape. There's only one bridge, and it would recoil when not in use. He could feel the assault of these mind flayers as they arrived with a burly ogre slave. He realized the purpose of this island was for him to be a shepherd to the flock. They wanted a gray dwarf and a Roth. So he went to work. He quickly dispatched them with little resistance, and he felt the curious emotion of satisfaction. He noticed that the motion of the lever to activate the bridge, but he didn't really understand any importance of it. He saw which way it went and just
Right.
kind of
Yeah, he noticed that in order to activate the bridge, the lever had to go away from Clacker's point of view,
towards
like
the
away
wall.
from him, right? That's pretty important.
But he doesn't know why. He just
Right.
sees it. That's
Yeah.
why that's kind of neat. Kind of like foreshadowing, but
Yep.
not really like coming out to say why. So he felt a command of "come to me," and he might have tried to resist if he saw any point. He walks halfway and was commanded to drop the kills and walk back. At that point, he tries to resist, but he felt the rage of a hook horror in him. But his petch thoughts let him realize that even if he made it past the ogre, well, the mind flayers would just pull the bridge back and drop him.
Yep.
So he goes back to the island, commanded to eat, and obediently slaughtered the nearest Roth and lost himself, and the hook horror took over in a feast of blood and meat. but there was still a small petch voice wondering about a Svirfneblin and a Drow. Then we shifted to Belwar. He caused quite an uproar at the slave auction because he did two of the things that were most sought after by the Mind Flayers. He could work stone, he could fight in the arena.
Right.
A large ransom was paid by 3 Mind Flayers who led the party that captured all the companions. Suddenly he hears the voices do come out from his new master. He wanted only to please his new master, so he moves with no hesitation. He walks through this portcullis, and every time I hear the word portcullis, I think of one of those chains.
Oh, totally.
Just,
totally.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And as he walks through, he sees many Mind Flayers with their expressionless octopus face.
Ugh.
But the link let him find his master quickly. An ogre appeared from the other side. He was told it had threatened Belwar's master and was encouraged to destroy it. So he rushed at the ogre, and the ogre was told the same thing, so it rushes at him.
Mm-hmm.
And Belwar uses his cagey veteran tactics to change the battle, so to speak. Uses his size against, or lack of size,
right,
against this giant hulking beast. And then, much like when Drizzt found the basilisk, he topples this giant, runs up its head, and he starts trying to lose his fury on it.
Totally.
Until he heard a command to stop. The ogre was dead. The Mind Flayer realized that the body was part of the deal, and there's no reason to ruin dinner. Then we shift to the heart of the Illithid castle. Yeah, I was like, again, here I am on the cannibalism. Like, what are they going to cut him up and just put him on a ogre steaks? How's that go?
He's like beating the ogre in the head. Like, they probably want to eat its brain. So
yeah, there's not going to be much. It's like maybe it's a pate treat at that point. Right? So then we shift to the heart of the Illithid castle, where a huge tower, each level housing several Mind Flayers. But at the bottom was the most important being of all. It's this giant central brain.
How creepy is that?
You know, I read these books, Kotas. Every time I read that, it's always like, oh, right, the giant.
Yeah, right. I mean, like, playing D&D, like, I don't know that I've ever used a Mind Flayer before, but I've known about them for a while, and I've heard of them in other games and everything.
Right.
Do we see them in... Oh, my gosh. Of course you see them in Baldur's Gate 3 as well, but nothing so far that I've seen, because I haven't played very far. Haven't seen a central brain yet, but yeah, that's really creepy.
Well, it's nice because it's like, what, 20 feet in diameter? And it's
it's huge.
It's massive. It's not, And this brain is basically their god.
Right.
Only a few slaves were allowed within this tower. Those with delicate fingers.
That could massage it.
Yeah, that could massage the Illithid god thing and soothe it. So naturally, this is where Drizzt is. I was like, oh, I mean, yeah. So
that's weird.
These knots appear when the brain thing is feeling anxious or angered or hurt, and then Drizzt feels this anger and anxiety. He needs this.
That's right.
Need these knots out of the brain, and it soothes it out. And so when the brain is pleased, he's pleased. Nothing else mattered in the world to him. He had found his purpose. Yeah.
So I mean, I found it interesting that was slaves' work, especially considering that this brain was the Mind Flayer's god, right? You would think that the Mind Flayers would want to do that. They would feel like it's a privilege to be able to do that.
Now, so I'm a big fan of The Wheel of Time. The show is currently on. I've read the books, and not to jump back and forth too much, but they have these slaves, essentially, servants, called Gaishin, and they wear these white robes and they do all the work in the place. They walk around, they do the laundry. So I kind of, when I pictured Drizzt, I pictured him wearing the servant robes of some kind. Okay. And he's walking around in like sandaled slippers or whatever, and he's just, massaging away. He's like, there can't be anything threatening. Like, there's no sharp objects on these things, and they're also mentally cowed by the brain thing. But also, there's just all these mental Illithids, Mind Flayers, floating around that
so there's
always
really
have
no risk.
No, because they always
Right.
have control of your brain. It's almost like
Right.
spices everywhere, and it's just affecting your emotions, and you're just
Yeah.
all you live for. But even a guy as adept as Drizzt is just to make this thing happy. He loses all personal control
Yeah.
to this invasive telepathy. It's like it's really kind of creepy when you look at it.
Oh, totally.
So then you have these three illithids that stand, marveling at the return on their investment from acquiring Belwar, and they discuss what other uses he might have. But his master from the arena was concerned only with acquiring more winnings. As they wondered the benefits of the three companions, they hold up this onyx figurine. Well, we've seen that before.
Oh no.
They turn it over and they realize it's an entity stone. I did not know this thing had a name when we thought about it earlier on and we looked at it. An entity stone was really cool. Anyway, it's linked to the astral plane. So they worried that it might contain a dangerous creature and thought to observe it in its own plane of existence first. The mind flayer from the arena went to count his winnings, and the other two, they prepare to do this thing where they take the journey of their corporal bodies to the astral plane. And they follow this kind of like cord, I guess, that attaches their being to
Oh
the,
yeah. Yep.
to the other
We'll be
side.
talking
So it's
about
like
that.
the silvery cord. Yep. So I thought it neat because you think about it like space travel where they show the you zip here and there through the
Okay.
speed of light. You know the what do you call it? The wormhole they go into.
Oh,
So
yeah,
they
yeah.
draw it out. So that's kind of what I saw when in my head when I pictured
Okay.
the
Yeah.
cord that goes out, and they're just following along.
Following that. Yeah.
And when they get there, they see Gwen. And Gwen's romping through a forest of starlight in pursuit of an elk. And the
Right.
cycle was endless. And this order and harmony that ruled the Panther's existence ultimately ruled all planes of the universe. Not all creatures could appreciate an endless hunt. Creatures from the mind, like the mind flayers, they only thought how they could use the Panther for themselves. I thought this was really cool because I don't really, again, didn't know a whole lot about mind flayers, but to picture the fact that they can jump between the planes and just kind of go in there, like, what's over there?
Yeah.
Oh, hello.
Well,
And just observe, like,
Yeah. Well, from my understanding, they're originally from the astral plane, so they're honestly probably more at home there than in the material plane. I believe.
Mm-hmm.
I might be making that up, but I'm pretty sure.
I don't know. But I like to think about the fact, like, Drizzt, he had no really idea or concept of, like, how to get to Guinevere's homeland. She just knows that she goes through the fog into another part of the plane.
Right.
But these things look at it, they're like, we're not gonna call it. We're actually going to, like, backdoor and go over here. And
Yeah,
just
that's really
observe.
cool. That is cool.
So, chapter 17, we go back inside the arena, and Belwar finds himself under the spell of his master and against a foe that seems, well, somehow familiar. However, this hook horror is much larger than Clacker. And this battle is much closer than the last time we found him in the arena, and it almost costs Belwar his life. His warrior instincts save him at the last moment. He manages to bludgeon his foe until suddenly they both feel a great affinity for one another. Their masters had decided on a draw. Belwar sits in his cell after the match, heavily battered and bruised. Recovery would take many days. The Mind Flayer bid Belwar to follow. They passed a kneeling Drow. And Belwar thought, it must be fortunate indeed to be able to bring pleasure to the brain in the community. The Mind Flayer led Belwar back to a room and bombarded him with suggestions and questions, attempting to dive into Belwar's mind to know everything he could about this Earth Nebulin, till it comes across this curious chant.
Oh,
Bivrip? I didn't know Bivrip would be a chant. I think of it more like maybe a mantra or a word, but
Yeah, just kind of like an activation word, Or
Yeah.
What would you call it? Like a verbal component of a spell.
Yes, okay,
Sort of thing.
okay.
Yeah, that's how I always thought of it.
well, I guess then you would
Yeah.
be chanting it. But anywho.
Yeah, maybe.
So the Mind Flayer then asks Belwar asks about it, and Belwar reflexively tries to bang his hands together. The Mind Flayer smiles to itself. If his champion were to go in the arena again, then a rematch with the hook horror was demanded, and he thought he'd be pretty well prepared all of a sudden. So then we cut to, Deanon? And he's riding his lizard mount like at the beginning of the first
Right.
book.
Yeah.
But this time he has no insignia. Secrecy is his ally. You never know who's watching, which is kind of like the first time. And then all of a sudden, nothing like the first time. These bugbears walk directly into his path. Wait a minute. I've seen this play out.
I
before.
think you started reading the first book again, Jeffrey.
No, because this time he's able to check his rage. He does not ride down the bugbears and yell about his station. And then suddenly from the shadows, well, Jarlaxle appeared alone. Although Dinan expected that Jarlaxle was never truly alone. So the two trade verbal barbs until they come down to business. Dinan wanted to know more about Zincarla. Jarlaxle wonders if Dinan, if his visit was official from Matron Malice. So he pressed him further with questions. And Dinan wondered if Zack had been a spirit wraith too long. But Jarlaxle was quick to explain that it was for Lolth and Lolth alone to decide. Biff rip! Belwar bangs his hands together and sparks fly. His master is full of glee. He sent for directions for the cubby that it wanted in the corner, and Belwar goes to work. Stone explodes to dust, and the armor of a Hookar would never stand a chance against this. Biff rip! But this time, more of a question, triggering a memory in his mind, perhaps? Drizzt? Suddenly, the name's forgotten with the next bang. He just wanted to please his master. This cubby has to be perfect. Drizzt kneeled before the brain. Running his ebony hands over it, he felt sadness. He poured water slowly over the brain. And he felt pleasure as the skin smoothed out under his hand. The brain, however, was busy warning the Illithids that it had detected another Drow intruder in the Illithid tunnels. Another slave to massage and soothe the brain, it believed. It sent out 4 mind flayers to go capture the Drow. Surely an easy task. Or so they believed. We go to chapter 18, and that Drow, well, here comes Zombie Zack, still on the prowl. Mind flayers have a neat little ambush set up, but their mental attacks, well, they don't really work against Zack because his consciousness is somewhere else. It's on another plane.
Crazy.
Which you think they would actually kind of know since they just went to the plane for Guinevere. I wonder, but anyhow, they think it's just this incoming Drow. Well, Zombie Zack walked off with the gore still on his swords because he knew there would be more killing ahead. Oh, wait, let me cut back there for a second, jump through that. His mind's on the plane, so his swords make short work of the mind flayers who fell in surprise as their mental attacks have never failed them before. But Zombie Zack, he still walks off with the gore on his swords because he knew there would be more killing very soon.
Why take the time to clean it when...
Gonna get it dirty again in a second anyway.
Yeah.
So we shift the scene back to the astral plane. The 2 mind flayers, they're peeping on Gwen, but they're unaware that the Panther knew. Drizzt hadn't called in many days, and Gwen wondered if this had something to do with the arrival of these creatures. So she waits for an opportunity to spring into action. She attacks the one mind flayer and follows the other one back through the cord, through the astral plane, back to the material realm. Then back on Stone Island, Clacker sees a commotion arise on the other side as crisis has clearly made its way to the community. Clacker sees a chance for escape. He knew he needs the bridge. But how can he get the bridge? Suddenly, he realizes if he could just hit the lever, it would actually move towards the wall and bring the bridge to him. So, of course, he grabs the nearest dwarf and launches it just short as it hits the wall, splats, and falls all the way down to its death. So then he grabs his next projectile, which is a young growth. But back to Zack, he walked towards the Mind Flayer community with no care for secrecy because, well, he knows the blasts can't hurt him. But his blades would definitely hurt them. Mind Flayers fell before him, then came their slaves to weigh him down, but, well, his deadly dance continued. The Mind Flayers sent wave after wave at Zombie Zack to bury him under the numbers, but the dead slaves continued to mount. Meanwhile, Belwar and his master watched the bodies of 2 Mind Flayers returning from the astral plane. But only one was showing the signs of movement that normally accompany this. And then, suddenly, there's a panther on the lap of one of the Mind Flayers. And it kind of sends a memory into Belwar's mind. These memories are dangerous. They give the Burrow Warden too much of himself and allow him to fight off the order of his master to cut down the panther. Gwen dove to save Belwar as the Mind Flayer turned on the Deep Gnome. Belwar was bowled over as a whoop. I always think of that from the Zelda. Whoop. The little blue wand.
Oh, I don't know.
Oh, first Zelda, you would get the boo wand. It would shoot.
It's been a long time since I played that one. I was like, shoot, I beat all the Zeldas. I should know what Fwoop is.
It's the very first one. So Belwar's bowled over, but the blast is no use against the rage that Belwar felt as he was finally free of control. And I that moment was kind of cool because up until then, I've been reading over it as we go through a little bit, as trying to be, I don't know, kind of schmaltzy, whatever you want to call it. They've been so under the control of these mind flayers that they haven't been able to exercise any kind of, I think, personal.
Oh, no, like
Not inflection, but anything that would show their own personality,
right?
So to speak.
Like they're gone. Yeah. They're gone. So, like the title of this part was what? Helpless. It's looking pretty helpless. I forgot to put the name on the chapter,
but the part, yes, yeah, and I mean it's neat because up until here they're just following orders, and all they want to do is follow those orders and make everything good, and they feel great. And it's like suddenly somebody pulls the plug, and Belwar is looking around, and he is furious. Yeah. He's like, "Wait a minute, you did what to me?
Right?
You had me out there doing your bidding," and he just loses his rages out, and the Fwoop doesn't. They can't slow him down. He's just off and running basically of that. So the Mind Flayer tries to chase the Panther. When the Mind Flayer tried to chase the Panther in fear for its god thing, but Belwar lashes out. 40 feet down below, the Drow senses its master's fear as it looks up and sees a large panther spring into the air. He didn't recognize Gwen. He saw only the threat it posed as it dove into the soft flesh of the brain with her teeth and claws bared. 650-pound panther, right? 20-foot brain, panther from about 40 feet up, 600 pounds, teeth and claws, flying down like a falcon trying to snatch its meal. And again, here's Drizzt, who is still in the throes of this central brain. And he looks up and is just basically the panic and horror grabs his heart. And he doesn't even recognize his friend. He is so
well, he's
under
just
the thrall.
Entranced, yeah.
Yeah. So then we go to chapter 19 called Headaches. About 120 Mind Flayers suddenly get a very large headache when Guinevere plowed through the mass of defenseless flesh. Claws tearing and slashing through the gore. Drizzt ran and shouted as his master was being destroyed, keenly feeling the anguish that the brain sent out in waves as the panther continued to tear into it. Suddenly, Drizzt wondered where he was. What was going on? What the hell was in front of him? The Mind Flayers, they're racing to find a way to attack the panther, and Drizzt suddenly caught a glimpse of his best friend. The Mind Flayers were so focused that they overlooked the slaves in their haste. They're trying to save their god thing. There's this giant panther in the middle. They can't reach it. You can't exactly fire weapons at it because you're trying to protect what it's tearing apart. And they're not even paying attention to any of the slaves that they're losing control of all around them. Drizzt took advantage, for even without his scimitars, his body was a weapon. Suddenly, the slaves began to revolt against their former masters in numbers. Amidst the chaos, Drizzt saw another drow being fed on in a gruesome manner as the tentacles of a Mind Flayer worked inside of the drow skull and feasted.
I forgot about that. Oh, man, that was rough.
Yeah, and that's when I was like, oh, dinner. Oh, right. They have that ability to just latch onto your bro. Oh, my. Man, that is...
And I think I did Mind Flayers as a dungeon delve back in the first book, and they have an ability where basically, like, if they capture you and manage to get into your brain, it's instant death. Like, there's no saving throws or anything. Like, you're just
because they're eating it.
Yeah, exactly.
They're like popping a straw in a Tropicana juice. Just, So Drizzt turns and looks for an exit, and he goes out the door and crashes right into another elephant. We cut over, and Zombie Zach continues to push forward, outside of the castle. The slaves who had rushed him were now free of the central brain and more focused on their own escape. The fall of the central brain had given Drizzt his identity back, but it also gave Zack a clear fix on his target. And with a guttural growl, Zack marched forward, killing anything that stood in his way, without care whether it was a mind flayer, bugbear, goblin, or something else. Back on Stone Island, Clacker was continuing his carnival game of toss the roth at the lever, try to win a prize. It took several shots, but eventually he hit it with one of the cow-like creatures. He scooped up another gray dwarf just for luck and headed across the bridge as it finished extending the island. That's just for luck?
It's a good thing he did.
Well, he made it about halfway until the first mind flayer showed up, and he's caught in the middle. He realized he only had one shot. So he's lucky dwarf that he's got. He launches into the air, sent it crashing into the mind flayer before it could reach the lever of the bridge. I guess Clacker had so many throws that right now he's all warmed up and
totally
pinpoint accuracy. The distraction worked long enough for Clacker to be able to make it all the way over to the other side. The mind flayer came after the exhausted hook horror, but its greed cost it dearly as it tried to feed on Clacker's brain instead of just killing him. Clacker bit off two of the oncoming tentacles, and he tossed the mind flayer to its doom. I was like, cool. Right, Clacker's face is a beak.
Oh, yeah, totally. Yep. He is a hook horror.
Belwar searches the quarters nearby for his equipment. He saw the figurine of Gwen and picks it up. And then he paused to smash the head of the illithid that Gwen had left, drifting away on the astral plane. A secret cache was behind the mind flayer, and Belwar found his pack and that of his companions. Belwar could hear the commotion below, and it sounded like sweet, sweet music to his ears. That made me chuckle. You mentioned Belwar kind of tiptoeing in, not tiptoeing, but tiptoeing into this little room. It's like, oh, there's the other illithid, the one that didn't get shredded by Gwen that come in on the lap of, and he's like, oh, got my stuff. Oh, boom, and just smashes its head out of just which you don't want it coming back, and these things are deadly, so it makes sense. But it's like the way it was written made me go, just walk around, bink.
Yeah, totally.
Like, extra XP. We returned to Drizzt to find him being bear hugged by the illithid that he ran into. He could feel the tentacles beginning to make their way under his skin as it sought to feed on him. But a few well-placed knees to the groin loosened the grip on him.
I loved that part. Because it was just like he analyzed the anatomy real quick and he's like, I'm going to take a chance here.
I'm going to hope this works. That might be its groin.
Now, I don't know that that's like particularly accurate nowadays as far as like illithids having reproductive organs placed between the legs.
Right.
Again, Baldur's Gate.
Well,
so I don't want to get too much into it, but
there's a movie, and forgive me for not being able to amend it, but he's like, it's like back in the 80s, and the guy's like, oh, he kicks the monster or the alien in the knee, and it goes down like screaming, and the guy says something, and he goes, well, not everybody's genitals are placed there, and it's like, oh, they're on the knee.
I remember that, but what was that from?
I don't know. I was like, I just vividly always remember that scene. It's much like, what is it? Wolfman's Got Nards from Monster Squad. The hunter comes to the front of Drizzt's mind and refused to surrender to the pain and agony that Drizzt was in. He tore the tentacles out with savage tenacity and held on to them as he pummeled the mind flayer with his other hand until the life left its eyes. But I mean, you imagine that mind flayer. It's got and the tentacles. They're in the skin, and all of a sudden he's like, oh, here comes my meal, and the eyes of Drizzt must have changed into the hunter. It just
they must have
snatches that, and you at what point do you think that mind flayer was like, uh-oh, and then he just hangs on to basically its most dangerous weapon and beats it with its other hand. Like, wow, that's savage. It definitely is savage tenacity, but it's like that is just a whole other level of primal.
Totally.
Suddenly, Belwar throws down Drizzt's scimitars and then continues his fight while running down the ramp. He bowled into two mind flayers, but makes a quick escape after wounding them both as he continued to make his way down, killing a couple more mind flayers along the way. With scimitars in hand, Drizzt begins carving a path through the mind flayers, the hunter's primal mind working like a buffer against the mental attacks. And just as the hunter was on the verge of taking over, Drizzt manages to pull to the front as Belwar calls out to him. He was lying on the ground with a twisted ankle. Guinevere showed up and began to work as a scout to find a way out for all of them. Belwar and Drizzt realized that anger could beat or slow the effects of the mental assaults from the mind flayers.
I thought that was interesting. Just the act of being angry slowed their assault.
Yeah,
But then,
no, it was
but
neat
then,
because,
yeah,
like, I guess what they're charming them and like enchanting or whatever. So like being so overtly angry, there's just no way. It's like
right,
you can't enchant somebody you're fighting. You know what I mean?
right.
Like or charm.
So
You can't
then,
charm somebody you're in combat with.
right. And so at that point, it's like, Drizzt, get angry. He's like, I can't just, like call on the hunter. It's like when,
It just doesn't
when,
work that way.
when the Hulk loses his ability, when I forget the scientist's name, when
Yeah,
he can't change into the Hulk, like he's
it's
not
Bruce Banner.
Banner. Yeah. Yeah, it's sort of like that. It's like, I can't just get angry on command for some reason.
Suddenly, the sound of footfalls let them know that they're being chased on their way out. They could hear the distinct whoop of the mental blasts getting closer. They came upon a large set of locked doors, and Belwar quickly set his enchanted hands to work. The door slowly gave way, and Belwar realized that it was barred from the other side. So it kind of like, I guess, but like dents or moves just a little bit, and then realizes it's barricaded or barraged.
Right. Yeah.
So he continues smashing away without slowing down until he makes just enough room for them all to get through. Upon the other side, they worked quickly to put the doors back in place to stop their pursuers. So it's kind of like you bend the fence and slide under and pull the fence back.
Yep.
Not that I have ever done that in my life. So they stood there making a plan, wondering about their friend Clacker. But a large boom on the other side of the door caused it to quiver and open just about an inch or two. So they had to leave as fast as possible. The hunter and Drizzt began fighting through the enemies in front of them. There were enemies everywhere. But suddenly, Belwar cried out, "Clacker!" And their friend showed up and told them the best exit to take. The companions began to move toward Clacker's directions, but Drizzt stood transfixed on something above. Belwar turned to look, and they saw a being atop another stairway, mowing through the mind flayers and slaves alike with deft maneuvers and precision strikes that could only have been done by one other person since Drizzt was down here. Zachnafane? We go to chapter 20. It's Father, My Father. So then Drizzt is down there, and he's just standing there, stunned at the sight of his father alive, barely able to speak. Belwar and Clacker urged Drizzt to flee, but he would not leave his father. Drizzt took off towards Zachnafane. Meanwhile, alarms blared in Zombie Zach's mind as its target drew near. Like one of those romantic movies where the love interests slowly run towards one another on the beach. Except that Zombie Zach was determined to drive his swords through his son. So not quite like that. Drizzt's elation at seeing his father wanes as he quickly forced to parry another incoming blow. He calls out at his father, demanding to know who it was as the swords rang out against one another. But no answers forthcoming from the spirit wraith. Drizzt delivered a mortal wound, but the wraith kept coming. And he realized at least a part of the horrid reality. This is not his father. Belwar and Clacker call out they need to leave before the mind flayers regroup. Clacker has a moment of patch clarity, and the stones told him the mind flayers' movements. Drizzt, however, only had eyes for the monstrosity before him as he realizes that the abomination was the work of Matron Malice. Drizzt wants nothing more than to plunge his blades into the wraith and erase it from existence. Often, the best laid plans go awry, and Drizzt was intercepted by a mental blast from an ambushing Illithid. But as Drizzt fell, a giant roar took up the cavern as the patch that Clacker used to be seized control, foiling Zombie Zach's attack by speaking with the stones and conjuring a wall to protect his friends.
That's really
Hook
cool.
Har. When I read about the patch, because I do the patch later, it really changed how I saw it. Because when I saw it in my head,
Cool.
I thought it was a lot like the Deep Gnomes, where the walls they would have just like slide out and then to blast, like they crafted it.
Right.
This is more of like a living thing that just slides out to basically like protect his friends. And then all of a sudden, this giant Hook Horror patch dashes up, grabs Drizzt, and bolts.
Nice.
Chapter 21, back home at Menzo Berenson, Matron Malice felt the zombie wraith's elation at having found its target. Praise Lolth, he has Drizzt. The matron had dived deeper and deeper into Zinkarla in the past days, an obsession of sorts, and the family had noticed. but Matron Malice was too entranced to see that they had noticed. Suddenly her rage spikes as Zachnafane was stopped from killing Drizzt. She felt her very life being stolen away by Zenkarla. Every thought, every hope of her existence hinged on the Spirit Wraith's success. She saw her emaciated form in the mirror and sent everyone away. She suddenly realized the similarities between her and Matron Bayenray. Withered and ugly was her future as she was wrought dry by the possibilities and demands of her station in her house. This was her duty, but this was Drizzt's fault. More than anything in this world, she wanted Drizzt dead. I thought it was cool to compare like her like being emaciated and losing sustenance, basically, like, you know, life force, and thinking that that's what happened to Matron Malice. And we get to that later. Oh yeah, sorry, Matron Bayenray, and we get to that later in I think the next part.
I think that's in part 5. Yeah.
Yeah,
but
it was really cool for her to look at it and be like, "Oh, I'm going to be shriveled dry like a prune. I am going to look like Matron Bayenray." I was like, oh, subtle jab. Drizzt and friends run through the tunnels. Belwar's falling behind because, you know, short little legs, and damaged body wouldn't let him keep up. But Clacker was quick to toss him on the shoulder and not slow down for the pace at all. They come for a short rest, and Drizzt finally explained the situation with his former father, current zombie, to his friends about how his mother had sacrificed his father to the Spider Queen and the abomination that now chases them. Drizzt wondered how the battle ended earlier and found out that Clacker had used the powers of a Petch to help him. They were a peaceful race, only desiring to work the stone. It was their calling and their love. The Petch were brothers with the earth. They aided it, and it aided them, out of affection for one another. The difference between a Petch and a Deep Gnomes was how they communicated with the sentient earth. The Svirfnebli would hear the distant song of the earth, but the Petch could speak to it directly. Suddenly, with a snarl, Clacker felt his hook horror side struggling for control and feared he would lose this battle. At the least, he knew he was losing what he'd gained in the cavern. And the hook horror, which was formerly a Petch, begged to die.
Yeah, and it's not the first time he did, right?
No, and it's like replete through this part, again, is the theme of helplessness. I thought that was apt and really cool. I mean, because it sets up the finale, the penultimate moment, the finale, the next part, really good, because you're seeing all these despair, helplessness, hopelessness. It's all just kind of like stuff's going bad.
Yeah, like, totally.
Where are our heroes going to go on next week's episode?
I'm so excited to get to part 5, but we still have to get through a couple bits of this show. Let's go ahead and move on to the dim light reel. The dim light reel is where we cast darkness on our favorite parts from this week, and we dim light all of our favorite characters, events, descriptions, and more. My favorite visual this week comes from the end of chapter 18 going into the beginning of chapter 19. But actually, right before we get to that, let's talk about Gwen a little bit here. Remember, she's back in the astral plane. She's going through this cycle of hunting this elk over and over and over, which I thought was just like really interesting, that alone. But Gwen recognized that Drizzt must be in trouble because these mind flayers were like stalking her. She knew they were there, and mind flayers always mean bad news, right?
Mm-hmm. What I found really cool about the cycles, it's like it wasn't Gwen catching the elk. They never mentioned the murder or the eating. It was just the hunt, the chase.
Yeah, I thought that was really cool too. So definitely something I need to look into at some point. But yeah, these mind flayers, what you said, she ended up killing one of them and then basically following that silvery cord. It's like essence.
Well, she like snaps the cord and the one just kind of like in what is it? Sandra Bullock in Gravity, just cut the cord, just floating away.
George Clooney going off into space.
Oh, is it George Clooney that went?
Yeah.
Just drifting away.
Yep. And she follows that cord back toward the material plane. And eventually, she noted the danger that she and Drizzt were in and recognized almost immediately what would hurt the mind flayers the most by diving into the massive, fleshy, bulbous central brain.
Such a great descriptive word. Fleshy, bulbous brain.
The brain attempted to reason. It even tried pleading with the feline, but her primal ferocity did not allow for mental intrusions. The panther dug on savagely and was buried in the spurting slime. That's a quote from the book. The panther dug on savagely and was buried in the spurting slime. Loved that.
You can kind of like hear it in your head without actually having a sound. Like, that's spurting. It's like, just
spurting. That's a pretty bad one. And then later, I loved this part. Gwen was pouncing from the folds of the brain, much like a toddler from the depths of a ball pit at Chuck E. Cheese. Except, you know.
All the other kids are like, get off of there. Get off of there. No, come here. Get off. Stop.
Except, you know, this cat was covered in flesh and blood. She jumped out, made an attack, only to disappear back into the mound of torn flesh and gore. This was my favorite scene this week because, well, without Guinevere, like, the title of this whole part is Helpless, right? You're looking at them, and like you were saying, they're not having an ounce of their own personality at any point, and it's just, you're feeling completely helpless. And yeah, just the whole time I'm thinking, like, who's gonna save them? It's got to be Guinevere, right? Like, Guinevere's who else can release Drizzt and his friends? And I mean, I guess there was the off chance that Zachnafane could have eventually made his way in and killed the hive mind brain, just like in his attempt to get to Drizzt. Drizzt is right there. There is that off chance, right? But I wasn't banking on that. I did. I loved reading about Gwen coming to the rescue here. So her way of rescuing the group was just so Dungeons and Dragons. Just having this giant cat diving through this soft tissue of this brain and using her bonus action to go back hot and hide back into the folds of the brain was just such a creative way of dealing with this encounter. You know, I'm not huge on blood and gore when it comes to movies and stuff like that, but visualizing this scene didn't seem so bad to me, only because of the almost ridiculous amounts of blood that there must have been, right? Kill Bill comes to mind. I'm sure you've seen Kill Bill before.
Any Tarantino film, yeah.
Right. Totally.
Yeah.
So, Kill Bill, it's a live-action movie. It has a lot of anime kung fu type aspects to it. So when someone loses a limb from the main character's katana slicing it off, the person loses about like 5 gallons of blood. It just like starts pouring from their severed limb until, you know, they just drop down dead. But I don't know. It doesn't really make that much sense to me, but for some reason I'm okay with a scene like this. I guess I'm not actually
it's
seeing
a giant
it, right?
Disembodied brain too. You know what I mean? So it's like, it's not
Right.
like it's, you know, you're emotionally tied to this thing. The mind flayers are emotionally tied to this thing.
Right. That's true. But I mean, like, put me down in front of like a World War II movie or something like that, and I'm probably going to lose my lunch over that. But, you know, reading something like this, I can, oh man, I absolutely loved it. It was so like gruesome yet comical in some ways, and like I said, just so D&D.
You feel like Gwen's over there, like trying to, like, you know, like a cat using the litter box, like dig, 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 and then the brain convulses and pushes her up a little bit, but she doesn't want to get hit by projectiles, so she hops over the other side into the fold, like, whoop, can't get me, dig, 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 and meanwhile there's just blood, slime, spray all over the place, like, so
that was
cool.
That was definitely my favorite scene from part 4 here.
Nice. That's a very, very good dim light. I like it. My dim light is the arena fight. I'm a big fan of gladiatorial combat. At the beginning of chapter 16, we get a real cool intro to just such a scene.
So
Belwar.
I'm sorry, I need to interrupt. So would you say that you think about Rome multiple times a day?
I mean, probably at least once every other day.
Okay. Sorry.
Big into the philosophies, the Greeks, the West. Forget what that was from, where they were asking that. What was that?
I don't know. It's been a thing where people are making a bunch of jokes. It's some kind of study that went out that said, like, men think about Rome so often, more often than women do. Like, they think about it.
Oh, absolutely. I think about it far more than most people I know. I'd probably. Like the aqueduct is so cool. Anyway. So Belwar hears the words "do come out" inside of his mind. The telepathic voice of one of his masters. Like I said earlier, the iron portcullis raises, and he makes his way down a short passageway into an arena filled with several dozen mind flayers, seated, looking down from above, with their expressionless octopus faces.
Ugh.
Across the way, a huge ogre comes out of a similar tunnel on the other end, and Belwar heard his master speak again. This evil ogre beast has threatened me, my brave Smurf Neblin champion. Do destroy it for me. Belwar needed no further prompting, nor did the ogre, who received a similar message from its master. And I thought this scene was really cool. I mean, you've set the scene for a battle, and I had to stop as I began writing this part of the outline. I mean, Belwar's a badass for sure, right?
Mm-hmm.
But he's a deep gnome. So he's about 3 to 4 feet tall and around 40 pounds, according to Monsters of the Multiverse book.
Okay.
Ogres, well, they're about 7 to 8 feet tall,
So a good...
and a base weight of 450 pounds.
Okay, so 2 times his height, 10 times his weight.
This ogre was described as huge.
Oh, man.
So he's going to be a good bit bigger than the minimum. And this is the fight that we get to watch.
Oh, man, he's going to get smushed.
Right? Just by accident, he's getting smushed.
Right.
So as they come together, though, Belwar, he dives to the side and he uses his hammer to smash the knee of the ogre. And they said it sounded like a crack of lightning in the book.
Right,
I thought it was great.
right.
And then he uses his pick hand axe and catches him in the meaty backside. The monster stumbled, and Belwar threw himself at it to trip it up. He then pops up and climbed the ogre toward its head. The ogre, though, he manages to grab onto him, but Belwar digs his pickaxe hand into its chest. Now, ogres aren't known for intelligence, so he roars in pain, and he continues throwing Belwar, which rips this huge gash in its own chest. Right? So then as he does this, he kind of like reflexively jerks and flails, and a knee from the ogre just happens to knock Belwar to the ground. But he pops right back up, eager to do nothing more than please his master. Kill it, comes the command. And Belwar never hesitates. The ogre is flat on its back, clutching at its chest in vain, trying to stop the blood that's flowing from its mortal wound. But Belwar was not satisfied because this wretched thing had threatened his master. The most honored burrow warden charges straight to the top of the ogre's head with his hammer hand leading the way. 3 quick punches soften the monster's skull, and then the pickaxe dives in for the killing blow. And the doomed ogre jerked wildly in the late spasms of its life. And Belwar here shows why his value is so high at the slave auction earlier, as he overcomes this huge size differential to decimate this ogre with hardly any damage on his part, except for the random knee that caught him.
Right.
And the mind flayers, they come off as being just completely insidious here, right? Because they're staring down and they're gambling gold and potions. And I get a real, like, Kumite feeling. The tournament from the movie Bloodsport.
Okay.
With Jean-Claude Van Damme. If you've never seen it, highly recommend it. Check the movie out. But anyway, they're gambling and they're all smoking cigarettes and like $5, $10, $1,000, $10. And like, for me though, it's picturing these just giant squid face guys and the tentacles just, randomly flipping and moving around. But their fingers always doing that thing they do where they're like yes and they clench hands for no. And just exchanging and lumping up all these things that we would look at as treasures. Right. But to them, because they're magicians, it's going to be bottles and rarities, substances, and gold.
Right.
But just all these other things like tombs of knowledge and stuff that are going to be so much more valuable to them.
Right.
So I thought it's interesting to see here how Belwar's masters control his mind and lead him into the fight. And he literally changes Belwar's emotions at a whim and is able to make Belwar go against his more peaceful nature. Now, Belwar is a great warrior and everything else is peaceful, but he would not have just randomly went in there and savagely beat up that ogre. Belwar, though, he only wanted to please his master no matter the consequences of his action. And I mean, that's a terrifying enough thought, but then right at the end of the passage, they mention, like I said earlier, the body of the ogre was also part of the deal.
I forgot
no
about
reason
that.
to waste a good meal.
I forgot that's how they said that. Yeah, the body of the ogre was also part of the bet. That's interesting. Now, I mean, yeah, I don't know. I feel like even without mind control, they would have attacked each other. You know? I don't know.
I don't think he would have backed down from the fight. Clearly not. But I don't think he would have, went as far as he did. I mean, if it's his own survival he's looking at, maybe they get him to fight. But I don't think he would have, went at it.
Maybe he wouldn't have actually killed it. Maybe he would just,
he might have also fought a little bit more conscious of his own attack. Like he just went at it with reckless abandon and no fear. He went at it like Guinevere went at the central brain, just 40-foot dive, free falling,
all in, sploosh. Also,
splurt.
That's a little more accurate. All right, let's keep this show moving. We'll go right into the Dungeon Delve and try to link this week's chapters with Dungeons and Dragons. All right, the Dungeon Delve. It's the part of the show where we link this week's reading with our favorite tabletop role-playing game. And I would have loved to do a Dungeon Delve on Mind Flayers, but I know I already did that back in book 1, like I said earlier.
So technically, you loved doing a Dungeon Delve on the Mind Flayers.
Oh, totally. Absolutely. And of course, now that we know about this central brain, I feel like I should do it again. But instead, I thought it would be more interesting to talk about. Again, I'm pretty sure Mind Flayers come from the astral plane. I'm pretty sure that's what they call home. Now, if it's not, I'm sorry, but I'm going to talk about the astral plane. So various planes were described in the D&D context back in 1977. That's where they were first described, I should say, when Gygax published a paper titled Planes, the Concepts of Spatial, Temporal, and Physical Relationships in D&D. Within the paper, Gygax went on to describe a similar universe that still exists today in the context of D&D, the universe build that we use in 5e, right? Where we have a material plane that is sandwiched between a positive and negative plane. In 5e, these would be the Feywild and the Shadowfell. Around them are then the elemental planes, fire, earth, air, and water. And then where they meet, you would have the similar, where earth and water planes meet. There would be a mud plane sort of thing.
Right. We had mentioned that earlier with the frost guy a while back.
I forgot about that. But yeah, I guess we did. That's right. He even goes into the outer planes where the gods reside. He talks about that as well. So if you're interested in reading more about these planes within the 5e context, you can read about them in the Dungeon Master Guide. They start on page 43. As for the astral plane, you can find so many resources on incorporating planar travel in the astral plane, or to the astral plane in your D&D games. You can find so many resources online, as well as within the Dungeon Master Guide. There seems to be mainly two ways that you're able to get into the astral plane. Either you can physically enter it by finding a portal, or you can go into it mentally via a spell such as astral projection. And when you travel via astral projection, you possess this silvery cord we were talking about that we saw in this part of the book. And that silvery cord runs from your projection into the astral plane. It runs from that projection back to your physical body that remains in the material world. So I thought was interesting. And basically, if that cord is broken, you die. It's sort of like you were saying, in Gravity, George Clooney floats off into space. What came to my mind? What came to my mind was The Matrix, where if you die in The Matrix, you die in real life.
Oh, okay,
right?
Yeah.
But don't be too alarmed. That silvery cord can only be damaged by weapons specifically built for cutting those cords, like a legendary silver sword of the Githyanki, or the Psychic Winds, which I'll talk about later. or
excellent,
a 600-pound panther, apparently. Of course, if you travel there via portal, you don't have that silver cord, so if you die in real life as well, because that is your real life. Your physical form is in the astral plane.
I find that interesting that if Guinevere would die in the astral plane, she would die. But she dies ridiculously amounts in our realm, and she's fine.
Well, yeah, cool. I feel like there's got to be something else going on there, because she is a magical creature, so...
Right.
But I don't know.
Well,
I would assume if she died in the astral plane, she would
die in both realms, right? We die in this realm, we're dead. We go to that realm and die, we're still dead.
Right. I guess we're fragile mortal creatures.
Shucks.
So the astral plane is unlike the material plane in many ways. Solid materials don't seem to act as normal solids. They're almost more fluid-like. A day in the astral plane can be 1,000 years on the material plane, so time seems to stop there. Relatively to the material plane, that is. And when you want to walk somewhere, all you have to do is think about it. Oh, and of course, like I was saying before, there's the psychic winds. Here we have, like on Earth, in a material plane, we have normal wind, like a breeze, and it doesn't usually hurt. But in the astral plane, it's a chaotic place where there's this type of mental energy that rages across the plane. And if you're unlucky enough to find yourself in a psychic storm that has all this psychic wind, then you're going to have to make an intelligence saving throw. Upon a failure, you roll on 2 different tables, or the DM can roll on 2 different tables. One of those tables provides a location effect, like getting lost, or you're just like blown off course or something like that, while the other table provides a negative mental effect, like short-term madness or even long-term madness.
That doesn't sound very fun at all.
No, it doesn't. Also, throughout the astral plane, there are colored pools that are able to be found, and those colored pools allow for planar travel from the astral plane to the various other planes. So this is why I added it to my D&D campaign. So I don't want to talk too much about it.
Wait a minute. Your D&D campaign?
Well, yeah, like I don't want to talk about it too much since you're currently playing in it. But last time we played, you guys were actually in the astral plane, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think you guys were on your way to find again, this is heavily homebrewed. So I have the astral plane split up into like sectors, and then you guys saw a dragon in the one sector, and then you established that dragon was evil, and then it's like, oh, well, there's also a dragon over in this other sector, but you're getting like good vibes from it, so you were gonna go check it out, but
getting those good vibes. Yep.
But already you guys have encountered the psychic winds a couple times.
We don't know that, but yeah.
Well, that's exactly what it was, though. It was just this assault of mental energy that caused, I think, Rock to get paralyzed both times, if I recall.
Yep, Rock. I don't think Rock had very good saving throws on those. Luckily, my druid has immensely good the saving throw.
Intelligence, yeah. Intelligence, yeah.
I'm good in both, but the one I'm just really through the roof on.
So I will say that including the astral plane in my D&D campaign seemed very daunting for me as a young DM, but I had an idea, I really wanted to use it. So I did my research. Again, I homebrewed it a little bit. It really doesn't hurt. And I have been very happy with how things have been going. So has anyone else out there been going to the astral plane in any of their games? Let us know. Get on that Discord. Send us an email. Let us know, because I'd love to hear how you guys handle it as well. Anyway, that's my
it's just an interesting place. Intriguing all around. Like, I'm going to go read about it when we're done. just to sit there and, go further into it. I find that stuff really, really cool.
Yeah.
To think somebody just sat around one day and was like, all right, so this place actually connects. And you know what? When you get there, as a matter of fact, and it's so impressive.
Yeah.
So for me doing my dungeon delve, I decided that we're going to go with the Petch. And mind you, up until I
Nice.
say Petch, I say Petch every time because I came across the thing that told me how to say it phonetically. Because until then, he had been a Peck every single time in my head. So I'm
Oh,
trying to.
so you did verify that it is Petch.
Well, there's the sites I did the research on. Yeah, it came
Oh,
up as
okay,
like
okay.
PE-TCH or something like Petch or
Okay.
something like. There's
Okay.
an inflection
Right. Yeah.
in
Yeah.
there
Yeah.
that I'm probably missing, but
Oh,
but
maybe.
more Petch than Peck.
Gotcha.
So Clacker took up a little space in my heart during this book, so I thought
Aw.
it'd be fun to look into the race of the Petch just a little more. So Petch are small in size. They're a little taller and usually broader than deep gnomes, averaging 3.5 to 4 feet in height, weighing about 100 to 120 pounds. Their flesh is almost as hard as granite, so they get a
Hmm.
natural 15 armor class. I say 15. Look, if you look up Petch, I don't think there's anything solidified there, so it's kind of hit or miss. A little homebrew. One went up to,
Oh, okay. So
I think it was 17. It
gotcha.
said
Okay.
on the thing, but its
Gotcha.
bonuses that it gave away were ridiculous. Like a
Oh,
plus
okay.
6 on some stuff. So I'm going with the 15
Yeah.
on the armor class.
I'll try to get this on the creature feature.
Nice. I have oh, I don't know if I have a stat block for this one. I have to check it out because
Okay.
like the usually I have an image that I try to snip
Oh yeah. At
snip
least do
tool.
that. Yeah.
But for this, it was yeah. You'll see.
Yeah.
So they often wear thick beards, like orangish or reddish hair, but their eyes are large pupilless orbs.
That's interesting. Because
Yeah.
the mind flayers were also pupilless.
Well,
Now I
it's
know
I don't know if it's all about an Underdark thing because obviously they're not all pupilless, but
that's
for
exactly what I was gonna say. Yeah.
this race in particular, they can see both infrared and ultraviolet in their eyes,
Oh, interesting. Okay.
but they have no pupils. So I it's just I imagine it's a very haunting look when you compare them. Like, oh, they look kind of like a dwarf, except
Right.
yeah, no, not when you see their eyes.
Nope. Nope.
Like,
Nope. Nope. Nope.
they probably look like from Supernatural when you saw the demons and their eyes are all giant
Oh
black,
yeah.
just
Yep.
painted
Yep.
out. So they live to be about 200 years old, and they mature somewhere around 35. Petch are skilled miners and stonemasons, and it mentions that they blend their narrow entranceways of their homes into the living rock that can only be seen from exactly the right angle, hiding their existence, and they only use combat as a last resort. So I find that really cool because it's almost like Hogwarts, right? You got to be right at entrance 9 3/4. You can't see how to get into it, right? So
Right.
Petch are able to take what looks like a solid rock wall to me or you, and they bend it so that you walk by it thinking it, but there's just this little nook that they go in and
Right.
out of because they're all about camouflage and not
That's so
hiding, but
cool.
avoiding.
Right.
So they utilize picks as their primary weapons. They can use their natural affinity with the stone to their advantage. We saw this when Clacker throws up the stone wall to stall Zack and save Drizzt. Petch are considered considerate, kind, cautious, industrious, clever, friendly, and elusive. Now, according to the homebrew that I found at 5esrd.com, that's how far I had to go to find something like this. I don't know what that stands for other than
I
5th
don't
edition.
either.
But the Petch has a natural 15 armor, average of 33 hit points, a challenge rating of 3, speed of 20 feet. They can climb at 10 feet. For skills, they get a +5 in athletics, a +3 to perception, dark vision up to 120 feet, passive perception of 13. Interestingly, this site describes them as natives to the elemental plane of Earth.
Huh.
And I thought it was a clever way to explain how they're able to work the stone like clay and not quite bend it to their will, but kind of.
Yeah.
So from the descriptions of them, you can definitely see why Drizzt was able to poke so much fun at Belwar because it does seem like they sound a lot like deep gnomes.
Yeah. Right.
Except again, deep gnomes they'll be like sanding and pickaxing and pummeling the stone, whereas Petch almost like sing to it or like they're in touch to it because he asks him, he goes,
Interesting.
"You talk about the earth like it's sentient," and he goes, "Because it is."
Right.
And so to
yeah.
them, it says, like they can speak directly to it, whereas the gnomes, they can kind of hear it way off. So, like, Belwar is able to hear the stone,
Right.
but the stone is able to hear the Petch. And it makes sense if they were Earth, if they were part Earth elemental.
Right.
Not quite like the earth elemental we saw earlier that was the big stone slab, but in a similar way that it says that they come from that element to this element to work the stone, gems, and everything else. And it was like, oh, that's kind of cool.
That is cool. That is very cool. I've never heard of a petch outside of the context of this book. So
That's why it is not the easiest thing to find you some 5e stats for. So we can attempt to put it together, but you might actually have to make me a stat block thing for the PDF.
If you share the link, I have a place where I can do that. So
excellent. We can get that up there. Because otherwise I was like, bro, I had pulled from several different sites to slap it together.
Right. But you said like there was also like a picture. Nice. Awesome.
It's a pretty cool one because it's got the way, it shows the stone, but the stone's not like a wall. It's wavy. And so it's like there's no real ridges or edges. Right. And that's where it was like first really occurred to me. It's like, oh, so they mean like this, like they use the stone like water. It's like a wave. It morphs.
Interesting. That's interesting. Yeah, because I imagine that the picture that I have in my head of the petch is nowhere near what they're actually supposed to look like. But I don't know. That's what it is in my head for now. But anyway, that's gonna do it for this episode. I want to thank everyone for listening. Remember that if you like the show, give us a 5-star rating. Also, make sure you're getting the most out of this podcast. Pick up a copy of the book and read along. Hey, if you don't have time to read, don't worry. There's always the audiobook. You can pick that up digitally and listen to that during your commute, at work, at the gym, wherever you are. And when you've read the next part, shoot us an email at drizzdoneright@gmail.com. Or you can log on to our Discord to join in on the ongoing discussion. Remember, we would love to hear from you.
As we wind down the 4th part of this book, well, we're almost at the end, and then it'll be on to the last part of the trilogy. Justin, you mentioned before maybe in episode 0 for the book.
Oh, yeah. Oh, we'll totally have to do that. Yeah.
Excellent. I was like, I think it's a great idea. And for everybody at home, we're going to continue to try and innovate. Goodness gracious. We're going to try to innovate this product for you all as we go. Trying to make it better and better every time that we record. And if you want to join the list of our patrons, you can use this link in the episode description that says, support this podcast. Everything that you give goes towards the show. You know what? Every little bit helps. We'll see you next week. Unless you're getting caught up, then just leave it rolling and we'll see you in a few moments. Farewell until then. Play fair. Be well.